There's a village no longer found on any map. It once stood quietly at the edge of a crooked forest where the wind never quite blew the same way twice. The trees there leaned slightly inward, their branches tangled like fingers clasping secrets. The road into the village was narrow, more of a path than a road, the kind you wouldn't notice unless you were already lost. At the center of this forgotten village stood a house. A single-story structure. Unassuming. Sagging wood. A roof like a slouched hat. The walls seemed to absorb light, and the single round window on the front looked not so much like a design choice, but like an eye, watchful and always awake. But it wasn't the shape of the house that haunted people. It was the sound. At twilight, the hum began. Low, constant, and somehow alive. It vibrated in the bones, tickled in the stomach, and lingered in the mind long after it stopped. Some said it wasn't a hum at all, but a voice, not speaking in words, but calling in tone. Others claimed it was the earth itself, moaning beneath the house. And some said it was a heartbeat. Not human, not animal. Something else. The hum always began at the same time, just as the last bird fell quiet. And it stopped precisely at dawn, when the first beam of sunlight cracked the horizon. The origins of the hum. No one could agree when the humming began. Old records were lost in a fire years ago. Some say it started when the well in the village dried up. Others believe it began after the last church bell rang and then shattered, mid-chime, on a windless night. But the stories always came back to the house. Generations ago, a woman named Mother Rill was said to have lived there. A widow, a healer, a recluse. Some said she spoke to ghosts. Others whispered she could move illness from one person to another like cards in a deck. She helped people, but not for free. She asked for odd things, strands of hair, scraps of handwriting, pieces of broken mirrors. And then one day, she vanished. No one saw her leave, but the door was left wide open, swinging back and forth in a wind that touched nothing else. From that night on, the hum began. They boarded up the house. Nailed crosses to the walls. Some tried burning it, but it wouldn't catch. The flame turned blue and refused to spread, as if the wood had already been burned a long time ago, and didn't care to suffer again. So the villagers left it alone. They taught their children to ignore it. To never look at the round window. To cover their ears at twilight. And eventually, people forgot. Elliot arrives. Years later, long after the village had mostly emptied, a man named Elliot Carr arrived on foot. Tall, bookish, soft-spoken. He carried only a satchel and a tattered red notebook. He was looking, he said, for quiet. A place to write. To think. To sleep without the noise of the world pressing in on him. They told him about the house. Of course they did. But he didn't laugh, didn't scoff, just nodded, as if the idea of a haunted, humming house wasn't strange at all. In fact, he seemed drawn to it. "I've heard it before," he whispered, eyes fixed on the distance. "Not here, somewhere else. In my dreams. The first night." That night, Elliot entered the house. The door creaked, yes, but not in protest. More like recognition. The air inside was stale but not unpleasant, like the scent of closed books and forgotten cloth. Dust floated lazily in the shafts of moonlight from the window. And then, the hum began. Low. Gentle. Not frightening. Comforting, in a way. Like a lullaby sung from beneath the floorboards. Elliot closed his eyes and let it wash over him. He dreamt of a staircase descending into black water. At the bottom stood a door, and behind it, light pulsed, in rhythm with the hum. The days that followed. Elliot stayed. The villagers watched. He stopped shopping for food. Stopped speaking. The postman noticed letters began arriving at the house, but none were sent. They came from addresses that no longer existed. One letter had no words, just a drawing of an ear, and the words, "Don't hum back." On the fifth night, he left the door open. By morning, the house had changed. It was subtle. The window looked slightly larger. The doorframe slightly wider. A villager named Hal tried to peek inside, but his nose began to bleed before he stepped over the threshold. The sound of humming stayed with him for weeks. He moved away shortly after. Elliot's silhouette could still be seen at night, standing in the window, swaying gently, always facing outward, eyes closed. The villagers began whispering again. Some said Elliot was never real. That the house needed someone. That it had waited patiently, humming softly into the void, until someone lonely enough, lost enough, could hear its lullaby. The disappearance. On the 7th night, it happened. No one heard Elliot leave, but the humming rose higher than ever before. It vibrated through the trees, into the sky, into dreams. People woke with tears on their faces, with strange symbols drawn in the frost on their windows, with voices in their heads whispering in tongues they didn't know. Then, silence. When the sun rose, the door of the house stood open. Empty. No furniture. No sign of Elliot. Only that single warm stone, placed where a heart might be in the floorboards. Still humming, so softly, only the most sensitive ears could feel it. And now? No one speaks of the house now. If strangers ask, the villagers smile and say, "There's no such place." But they walk a wide circle around it. They don't sing. Don't whistle. Don't hum. Because the house is still there. Waiting. And if you ever find yourself walking along a path that shouldn't exist, in a forest where the wind changes direction without warning, and you hear a distant, droning hum, be still. Don't look at the house. Don't follow the sound. And whatever you do, don't hum back.